Hello everybody and welcome to WOOGIES Corner. My name is Doug Jack. I've been a musician and a mechanic pretty well my whole life. My friends, my family, they've been listening to me to tell stories about my daring do adventures and on the road and in the bush for years and years, and now the time has come. It's your turn. Today we're going to go back to Nevada, back to where I grew up in Reno, and then we're going to go about 90 miles east of Reno to a little town called Lovelock, Nevada. Little cow town, little sagebrush, and about 2,000 people maybe. You think of some of the old 1950s movies you might have seen about a little cow town. That'd be Lovelock. A little Humboldt River flowing gently through the town. A few big weeping willow trees. Pretty little place. My dad bought a uranium mine about 20 miles east of Lovelock, up in the hills, up in the mountains. And for those of you who are not familiar with uranium, it's radioactive. It's the stuff they build bombs out of. Power nuclear reactors of all kinds, submarines, and hospitals use nuclear medicine for various things. Anyway, a lot of that is uranium, and that's what we were mining, was uranium. Anyway, this was the back when we had the Geiger counters. Probably a lot of people today haven't seen one, but that's those things you see, you know, with the meter on them, and they had the thing in it, it was zzz, you know, whenever you got near the radioactive material. And I used to go with my dad back in the tunnel, and we had about a 2,500 foot tunnel back into this Lincoln Mountain. Hard rock tunnel. And that's where the seams of uranium would be. Now uranium is kind of like a grayish material, generally hard, almost granite-like, and radioactive. But there'd be seams of it. So he'd be going along up on the face of the tunnel where we were working, and he would be, you know, running this Geiger counter around and looking, and the thing would be zzz, zzz, and the meter would be moving. Fascinating. And then after that, you drill a bunch of holes, stick it full of dynamite, and you blow this thing up, and you muck out all the ore into ore cars, take it out, you know, to the portal. And he would load it on a dump truck and then down about 20 miles into Lovelock with a railhead. And then from there it went to, I'm not sure, probably, I'm guessing Los Alamos, New Mexico, which was a big nuclear processing facility. So anyway, it was, picture hot summer days, and we used to get some snow in the wintertime up there, but it was beautiful Nevada territory. And it was a great place to live, great place for a kid to grow up. Except rattlesnakes. Oh boy, we had some dandies. Now I'm sure a lot of people, especially in the Okanagan and other parts of the country, they're familiar with rattlesnakes. Well, we had these the big western diamondbacks, and these things would go 4, 6, sometimes as much as 8 feet long. They were big, they were nasty, and they were mean. We had them in abundance because we were up on the side of a mountain called Lincoln Mountain. And the whole camp was built on a tailing pile that kind of emanated from this tunnel that went in the side of the mountain. So Dad built this camp with our home and workshops and everything that we needed on top of this tailing pile. Well, that was fine, but up above us, up the Lincoln Mountain, was these volcanic caves. And in the wintertime, or the late fall, the snakes would, from all over the area, would come to these caves. There'd be bull snakes and king snakes and rattlers and, I don't know, garter snakes. They'd all get down in these caves, and they would roll up into these big mass balls, big balls of snake. And I remember as a kid, you know, going up there, you could see these, you could hear them because they're never totally quiet when they're hibernating. There's always this little bit of movement that goes on. and it's kind of a slithery, hissy sound down in the dark, just down in that cave down there. It was a little bit scary. Well, the problem is with this is in the springtime, when the weather warmed up, these snakes would thaw out and they'd start coming out of hibernation and slithering down the mountainside to where the mice and all their feed was down in the valleys. Right past our camp, which had some interesting moments, I'll tell you what. Because these snakes, you got to remember, when they're coming, they got the skin, they shed their skin yearly. So they shed over top of their eyes. So they're kind of backing out of their skin. And they're blind half the time. They can't see, they can't hear. Their tongue isn't doing real great because they can't get past the skin. And so they rely on ground vibrations and things like that. And boy, they are mean, they're hungry, and they are liable to strike out at anything, including kids running up and down the mountainside. It used to drive my parents crazy wondering why. You know, all the years we lived down there, we never got bit. In fact, I don't even recall any of my friends getting bit. We just sort of knew how to stay away from them. Plus we carried snake bite kits, which little razor, and you make an incision. If you got bit, let's say in your hand or something like that, you'd make an incision with this razor, and then you would suck out the venom, and you put iodine. Anyway, so rattlesnakes. They were one time. My dad, my dad loved to think outside the box. He got this bright idea. I think it was the spring of '57, if I remember right. He gets a case of dynamite. He gets a couple of the guys that were working with him and myself and my younger brother Steve, and up the hill we go. This would have been in probably April, maybe. And just the snakes hadn't come out of hibernation yet. They were still there. And we went up to a couple of these big caves where we knew where they were. They were, a few hundred feet up the mountainside above us. So, anyway, so up the hillside we go packing this case of dynamite and a bunch of fuses and blasting caps, and so we get up there and we make up some nice little bundles taped together of dynamite sticks and ram the fuse in and all this stuff, and so when the time comes, you can see these things down there. You can take a flashlight, look down in there, you can see this mass of snakes. Oh, there'd be hundreds of them. So anyway, down would go the bundle of dynamite into the hole, after we lit the fuse, of course. And then we'd all run like crazy ways away and boom! And man, there'd be snakes flying everywhere direction. And that's why we didn't want to be too close, because you don't want some snake flying at your fang first, because that could ruin your whole day. So anyway, we did that a couple times, and well, that was fine until about midsummer. It really did reduce the snake problem around camp, there's no doubt about it. One day, midsummer, cloud of dust, police car drives up into our yard. And that's, the old, what were they using? Probably Dodge Dakotas or something back in those, or Chargers, I can't remember, but had the round police light, up on the top. Out steps this uniformed policeman. He wants to have a little chat with my dad. Apparently, some of the farmers and the ranchers down in the valley, but down below us, they weren't too happy when they found out, they heard about this somehow, that somebody talked, and we were blowing snakes up. They didn't like this at all, because the snakes would come down and eat their mice and eat their rodents and take care of things in their fields and sort of make life better for them. They didn't like what we did at all, so they got a hold of the county sheriff department. Here comes the county sheriff, and so he comes up and has a little chat with my dad about this. So anyway, the snakes got a reprieve and my dad got a reprimand. But we had a good time in Lovelock, and I went to grade 3 and 4 there, I believe it was. And we had the little park down by the river, and we had the weeping willow trees, and we had tether balls. Anybody remember tether balls? That's where you got that stake in the ground, and you got the 10-foot rope, and you had this ball with a ring in it, and so you would, hit this thing and then you just keep moving it around, and the idea was to knock it so it went over the head of your opponent, and they would do the same, and whoever could wrap the ball and the rope around the pole first won the game. It was a lot of fun. Well, anyway, let's see, Lovelock. I think we pretty well exhausted that for the moment. Good times, really good times. Off we went to Reno. And we've talked about Reno in the first episode a bit. It was a good time there too. That was a fun place. We had a little park down by the river. Had the ice cream stand, the Truckee River going by, and we remember these two big peacocks, and they'd get their feathers out, and then they'd walk around, and weeping willow trees, and, clouds overhead. Summer days, and warm, hot summer days in Reno, Nevada. It was great. 1957, 58. Anyway, okay, we ended up leaving Reno in the fall of 58. My dad had bought a mining property, or was trying to buy a mining property, I should say, up in British Columbia, Canada, of all places. The uranium mining had sort of fallen apart. The price of uranium had dropped, and as it happens with minerals. So anyway, off we go, heading north with this caravan of a big truck, a 40-foot trailer, another big truck, a car, a horse trailer, a boat trailer, and only two drivers. Mom and Dad, my younger brother and my baby sister at the time, and she was about a year old. So it took all summer. What they would do, this is actually kind of funny. We'd leave Reno, okay? We got the big Ford F8 5-ton with a great big canopy thing on the back on the dump, built over the dump box, hooked onto this 40-foot trailer that I mentioned. Then we had this other truck, smaller 3-ton truck with a great big canopy on it, pulling a trailer. So Mom and Dad and the rest, we'd all load up in the morning, and so I'd jump in usually with my dad in the big truck, and then my mom had this 51 Packard, which I still got in my yard out here, and hook on to one of the little trailers. We had a boat trailer and a horse trailer. You can figure this. They would take the big truck, they'd take the boat trailer or one of the trailers, and off they'd go, maybe 100 mile, I don't know, up the road. This is before the I-5 was built. There were the twisty roads and windy roads. They'd find a spot, usually some motel parking lot up there somewhere, and then they would park the big truck and trailer, and they would drop off whatever trailer Mom was pulling with the Packard, and we drive back. Let's say back to Reno in this particular case. Hook onto the other trailer with the car, and Dad would jump in the other truck, and I'd go in there with him, and away we'd go again, back to where we went that morning, and that would be the day. And maybe we might make 100 mile, maybe, if we were lucky. And we did this all summer long. I mean, you can imagine sitting there, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back. The time we got to Everett, Washington, which was about 25 miles north of Seattle, we were, I think everybody was worn out, but the only time we ever stopped was for flat tires and breakdowns, which, in those days. By September, there we were in Everett, Washington, and it was decided that the time came to stop for the winter. So we did. We hunkered down for the winter, got a little motel unit in Everett, Washington, hunkered down for the winter. I went to school, a place called Whittier School, and finished. Let's see, what grade would I have been? I would have been in grade 6, I think. Can't even remember now, but anyway. So that, we got through the winter, and rain, man, I tell you what, I had never seen rain like that, because like in Seattle in the wintertime, she likes the rain. but we had fun. There was always things to do. Like, for example, there was an armory. The United States National Guard, I probably what it was, over the bank from this motel. And me and my new buddy that I met at school, we used to go after school, and we used to go down around the fence of this big armory, and we were looking in there, and they had armored personnel carriers, and we saw a couple tanks in there, big tanks, probably Shermans or something. And other stuff, we were just fascinated by this. Then one day it was announced that the armory was going to open for the weekend, and that for the public could come in to see what it was like. Oh man, I'll tell you, for a couple 10-year-olds, this was heaven. Man, we got to go in the armory, and we got to walk around and look at M60 50 caliber machine guns on tripods and ammunition belts, and climb in and out of personnel carriers. We got to climb in and out of that tank, and all kinds of, look at grenades and 50 caliber shells and all kinds of things. Maybe by today's standards that sounds a little bit warlike, but I'll tell you what, we're talking the late 50s here. It was wonderful. We had a great time, us kids. So anyway, okay, so now we leave Everett, Washington in the spring of, actually no, it was June of '59. And we start heading to the Canadian border. And we get to the Canadian border at Blaine and Washington. No, I'm sorry, it was actually Sumas, not Blaine, Sumas. In those days, if you wanted to enter the country, like Dad had to produce like $5,000, had to have access to $5,000 in cash. You had to have certain skills, which in his case, he was a mechanic and a mining man. He was a pilot. He was well versed in the law. He was a welder. I mean, there wasn't much this man couldn't do. So that was no problem. But anyway, there were some paperwork issues and what have you. So we never got across the border until about the middle of June. We find the time everything was said and done. Not to mention the customs. Canadian customs wanted to go through these trailers as well, as much as they could. Open the door and look at it. Oh my God, it was just packed right to the roof. So off we went from Sumas, heading north. Well, we get to Hope on the Trans-Canada Highway. And those who are familiar with it, Hope is where the Hope-Princeton heads off kind of to the west, or to the east, I'm sorry. And the Fraser Canyon, Highway 1, kind of goes up through the Fraser Canyon, which in those days, 1959, I'm sure that some of the viewers will remember the Fraser Canyon in 1959. Twisty, windy, narrow. I mean, that thing was all over the place. Well, we get in there with this Ford F8 dump truck with a 40-foot friggin' trailer on behind there. And what Dad didn't know, well, he either didn't know it or he just ignored it. I kind of have a feeling he just ignored it. Was that all the heavy truck traffic was supposed to go up the Hope-Princeton. And then they would connect into the Okanagan connector up, and it didn't end up in Cache Creek. That was how this is supposed to work. So when we get in the canyon, like up past Yale, and there's this tiny little bridge across the Fraser River, and holy smokes, and this is before the big tunnels were completed. They were just starting on some of the big tunnels. And they had trestles built out over the precipice, and you're looking 1,000 feet down into the Fraser River. I mean, it was something. This thing is 40-foot trailer plus this dump truck. Well, boy, I'll tell you what, and you couldn't turn around. Once you're committed, you're committed. Thank goodness this cop comes along. He's screeching like, what are you doing? So he has a chat with Dad, and well, he couldn't turn around. So okay, so he turned around himself, and he went ahead of us and kind of cleared traffic. And because there are places, I tell you, if somebody had met us, I don't know what we would have done, especially if it had been another truck. So anyway, we spent all day getting up through there, and there were places, I kid you not, where it was so bad that twisty and windy, and you got bedrock, you know, on this side, and you got this guardrail about this high on the outside. No big guardrail, just wooden guardrail. Right front fender of that truck is scraping rock over here. The outside dual of that 40-foot trailer is up on the guardrail and hanging out over space. Literally hanging out there over nothing. The only thing that was holding that trailer on was the inner dual. That's it. And I remember there was about 2 or 3 times my dad looked over and he says, "Get out of the truck." I'd get out of the truck and I'd walk behind because he was scared that if that trailer went over, busted through that guardrail or slipped off that guardrail, she'd take the truck with it, and well, there we'd go, right into the Fraser River. Oh my goodness, I tell you, it was something else again. But anyway, we managed to get to, I think we got to Spence's Bridge that night. And that was all day. And then we kind of kept on going north, dropped off the pavement just north of the Cotton River Bridge, onto the gravel. And that, folks, is how we arrived in Prince George, British Columbia, in, I'm guessing when there have been about the middle of July of 1959. And let's see. At that point, I think we're going to stop right there because we just got so much more of this, and we're kind of running out of time. This is a lot of fun. But you know, I'll do a little bit of one of my favorite renditions of Jerry Reed song. It's actually a Bob Dylan song, but it kind of goes like this. Ain't no use to sit and wonder why, babe, if you don't know by now. Ain't no use to sit and wonder why, babe, it don't matter anyhow. Hear your rooster crowing at the break of dawn. Look out your window, be gone. You're the reason that I'm traveling on. Don't think twice, it's alright. Don't think twice, folks, it's alright. And on that note, we're going to leave you. It's been a lot of fun. We got a lot more of these to do. Hit the subscribe button if you would to help us out with this thing, and as time goes on, we're hopefully going to get some special guests in here. We're going to have some fun with this. So in the meantime, my name is Doug Jack, WOOGIES History Corner actually, and it's been fun. We'll see